And I think we all have an opportunity to be the effect of change. And it's how do we inspire that and how do we find our voice in being able to make that difference, in the world. Business is a very powerful platform.
Welcome to the Sustainable Living Podcast. Tips, tools, and tactics for living a heart-centered life that honors Mother Earth and her inhabitants. The information shared on the Sustainable Living Podcast reflects the opinions of host Marian West, Janice Fryatt, and their guests. Please use your own discretion in research before applying any information to your individual situation. Now, here are your hosts.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sustainable Living Podcast. This is Marianne West, your host, and I'm here with a guest I'm very excited about. He's an author. He has been in the financial industry, in the corporate world for 35 years and has stepped out to do his own business now. And he still works with people in high up positions in the corporate world. So I want to welcome Mark Lefko to the podcast. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you very much, Marianne. Looking forward to chatting today.
Excellent. So I wanted to first talk about your book because that's how we got introduced to each other. And you wrote that you started writing this a couple of years ago, right? And it came out last year, the end of last year, I believe. The book is called Global Sustainability. 21 leading CEOs shows how to do well by doing good. I'm very intrigued by that because most people look at the industry as an enemy. So I don't know. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think there is a lot of scrutiny toward the corporate world today, and justifiably so in many respects. And I think we all have an opportunity to be the effect of change, and it's how do we inspire that and how do we find our voice in being able to make that difference, in the world. Business is a very powerful platform. I've been involved in business for a long time, and I realized that, there's lots of different ways to affect change. And since business has so much resource available to make change, I happen to choose business as a platform to use or to try and influence or inspire to affect that change in the world.
I really, really love that because even a long time ago when people started to get concerned about waste, it was very clear that businesses are the ones which can make a huge difference. Individuals, we can do a bit, but in the business world, there is a huge effect. If you get rid of packaging, you eliminate a lot of waste, for example. So I'm very intrigued by your approach, and I wanted to ask you, how did you start out on that journey towards sustainability and towards working with businesses?
Well, actually, Marianne, it started in 2014. I've always had a passion for leadership, and I've been in leadership roles, and I've had a passion for conscious leadership. And many people, that it's been a foreign term. Of late, it's been something that's become much more deeply understood. When I say conscious leadership, I mean leading with an awareness that whatever you say or do has an impact on all the stakeholders that are involved in your world. And that can, from a business standpoint, that can be your employees, your customers, your suppliers, your bankers, your communities, your shareholders. It can be, all of those stakeholders. And then also, I believe conscious leadership is really focused on the triple bottom line. And that means focusing on the people and then the profit and the planet. And all three of those equations are very important. So in 2014, I started, actually, the book title was Wake Up and Lead. And it was my interviewing leading CEOs that I believed were conscious leaders. And what does conscious leadership mean, and how do they express that? And I came to the realization that if I wanted to have more impact, sometimes the way we have impact is to change the way in which we articulate and share the mission. And I was realizing that, at that particular time, people were having a difficult time getting engaged by the words conscious leadership. And I understood that. And what I was most interested in is just the principles getting the principles across in a way that people could understand and process. So that was when I happened to come across the United Nations Global Goals. That was in September of 15. They came out with these 17 global goals. Your listeners can actually go to globalgoals.org, and they'll see those goals. And those 17 goals really boiled down to three main categories: ending extreme poverty, fighting inequality and injustice, and fixing climate change. And I got very inspired by that and felt that maybe it was appropriate for me to tweak the direction of my book from Wake Up and Lead to global sustainability, as that may get more attention and people to really focus on sustainability leadership. And so I'm going to pause right there, but that's really what inspired me to really focus this book on global sustainability and use some of these powerful leaders as examples to inspire other business leaders.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation. And I loved that you brought up the triple bottom line, because that was like a new concept for me when I read that. And would you explain that a little bit more? You did a really beautiful job explaining it in the book.
Sure. Profit is a very important component. And many people feel like profit's a dirty word. And that's what business is all about, or that's what capitalism is all about. But the reality is, that's what keeps the business system, operating, is profit. That's what inspires people to, if you have money and you're concerned about your retirement, you want to invest your money and you want to get a return so that you're going to be able to be sustainable into the future. You're going to be able to have financial sustainability. And the way in which you do that is either adjusting your spending patterns, or you take whatever savings you have or investments you have, or 401k, profit, pension plans and so forth. And that needs to be reinvested and receive a profit so that it grows and it allows you to be sustainable. Okay, so that's the underlying tenet of what inspires and motivates people and businesses, in most cases, to exist and to obviously serve their shareholders and stakeholders and investors. So that's important. But in addition to that, businesses can't thrive, and be sustainable if they don't have people inspired. And if they're not taking care of people. People are, one of the largest assets, in my opinion, that business has, or that corporations at whatever level have. Because without that is their human capital. And that's really what drives innovation, creativity, and really helps business to execute on its strategies. And so it really is important to just logically, to make people a center point as well in this equation. And then you also have to look at the environment that we all operate in, and the planet is at the most global level, is the environment that we need to continue to exist. So it only makes sense to really focus on the triple bottom line. And that was a concept that was coined actually about 20 years ago, but only now is it becoming something more popular. And even many of the fund managers, the Wall Street investment funds, are beginning to embrace that and understand that that's what's going to be required for organizations, to be sustainable going forward.
I'm so happy to hear that more people are embracing it, because to me it always made sense. If we destroy our environment, we still have to live in it. If we are poor or rich, we still breathe the same air, and we still want to have the same resources and so forth. And actually, when you're saying how people are important, I grew up in Germany, and I was close to what used to be the border to East Germany. And they used to get a lot of tax incentives to bring small industry to the border. And then when the border opened, all the tax incentive went away and some of the companies had a hard time operating. So furniture making was one of the main things in a certain area. And the employees actually worked for free for 2 years to keep the company going. The employees only did that because up till then, they always had been treated really well. And they looked at the company as their own as well. So I think treating people well.
No, exactly. And I think that's why it is so important for businesses to really be respecting, the employees. And, and the book, although the book's titled Global Sustainability, some people say, so, what do you mean by sustainability or global sustainability? And for me, everybody has their definition. And for me, sustainability is really, ensuring that we have the resources and environment that, that everyone has access to the resources and environment to be able to not just survive, but to thrive now and on into the future. And, I really do believe that it is all about people and how do we support people. And that's a key component to sustainability. And the book really outlines 9 best practices on sustainability leadership. So it's not, the book's not focused on only, how do we deal with the environment and how do we deal with, recycling, but really more importantly, how do we focus on long-term thinking? How do we deal fairly with our suppliers and our employees and our customers? And how do we show concern for our employees, their well-being and their motivation, and form good partnerships and reduce waste and so forth. So it's more of a leadership book. And in interviewing these 21 leading CEOs from very large companies, from Richard Branson to actually Dow Chemical Company, to Cargill, to Salesforce.com, to Tom's, to Unilever, all those CEOs, and what are their companies doing to demonstrate sustainability?
Yeah, I was actually really surprised that Dow was in there because, there are so many aspects of it which don't seem obviously to be good for the environment or for the people. And you really made a good point in your book too, is that CEOs are not always free to go the directions they want to go. Would you like to elaborate on that a little bit?
Right. That is true. And, because they have shareholders they're accountable to, and particularly some of these really large companies that are publicly traded companies. Private companies have a little bit more latitude, but public companies, they are continually under pressure to show performance and results and show bottom line profitability on a quarter-to-quarter basis, or else their jobs are at risk. And a lot of the Wall Street and other capital markets in other countries are not so forgiving. And what I found in the course of this is a lot of the European CEOs, have a different view, and particularly the ones that I interviewed, like Paul Pullman, the CEO of Unilever, and Feike Sijbesma, the CEO of DSM in Netherlands, both European-based companies and large companies, have really taken a stand to just say, look, we are not going to focus on short-term, quarter-to-quarter results. And, we are going to have a longer-term horizon because that's what's going to allow the company to be sustainable. And so them taking those positions, which are pretty bold positions and pretty courageous positions on their part, puts them and their jobs at risk, is making a statement, and it's also affecting the investors that are going to be embracing their talents and skills. And they've been delivering on their promise and demonstrating that they can really do well by doing good in the world. And their companies have done that, and it becomes the type of environment that's attracting top talent today. When they have a purpose and a passion, and the millennials hear about that, they want to work for companies that have a purpose and a passion and that are trying to do good things in the world. And are they perfect? No. They're huge companies, and you say Dow Chemical is not really, people when their eyebrows go up when they hear Dow Chemical as a company that has a sustainability orientation. And, many times companies have turned over new leaves, and new focus because they realize that they've made mistakes in the past, and now they see an important way to ensure sustainability of the company and the world, and they're stewards of that, and they've shifted their focus and priorities. But it takes some time for the world to catch up and really believe that that's what they're doing, and they have to show that by their actions.
So a couple of thoughts came up while we were talking about that. So I believe Dow might have a little bit of a hard time since they're dabbling with Monsanto at this point. And, Monsanto has managed to become such a poster company for people directing their anger to, let's put it this way. But it's good that they're trying, and you have a project in your book that they're really making a difference in certain areas in the world. The other thought which came up said European people seem to be a little bit more conscious about the impact each individual and all of our actions have, and are maybe more willing to support companies which are putting their action towards global sustainability or sustainability period. Do you think that might be a factor?
I do. No, I definitely see that difference. And, it's cultural difference, between, America and some of the European countries. I resonate with that. And I resonate with the fact that we do have to shift the thinking from me and I, to we and us in order to focus on sustainability. And my observation or my experience is that I've seen more European, countries, or more European companies rather, focused on that we and us, concept. And I think they are an inspiration for others.
Yeah, I think that it's definitely a cultural difference that people in the States go up more with, I have to do that. And in Europe, it's more, you have to look out for the whole. So there really needs to be a little bit of a paradigm shift from how can I get the most out of my investment to how can my investment do the most good for everybody, myself included.
Right. And, in the book, the title is, do well by doing good. And that's really a theme, a motto that I've really adopted, because I really believe that is very possible. And if you do good things, we can all do well by doing good. And, I think there are a number of levels of sustainability. I focus on people, but if you look at sustainability from the individual standpoint, and then from the workplace standpoint, and then from the community standpoint, I think we all have an opportunity to embrace this concept and apply it. And it's not only big companies, and the book talks about companies and even small companies that are startups. This Bar Saves Lives, which is a small company that's focused on supporting starving children in Liberia. It's a one-for-one giving company. But whether it's a big or small companies, it's important for the companies to be embracing sustainability. But I also think it's really important for individuals to realize that they can play an important part in advancing sustainability and doing good things in the world by even supporting themselves, their workplaces, and their communities.
Absolutely. And I think that's really kind of a key point. It cannot be one or the other. So both of them work together. So if consumers are indicating I'm okay with not making so much money on my investment, as long as you're fulfilling those expectations of doing good in the world, the companies are freer to do that. And also consumers can demand products which are more in alignment with sustainability principles and so forth. We didn't mention that, or maybe I did mention it a little bit. You're working mostly in coaching now. You're not just writing books, right?
Right. Well, I spend a lot of time working with teams, with executive teams. I coach and I mentor presidents and CEOs of companies on working with their teams and on strategy for their companies. But what I'm finding is really important, I've done this for many, many years, is I've facilitated offsite corporate retreats that are business focused on strategy and planning and bringing the teams together. Also on coming up with new products, new ideas, but using individuals in an in-person, environment to interact and develop ideas and strategies. We're in such a digital environment right now. People are really becoming disconnected from one another, and I don't think there's any substitute. I lead a number of peer groups and think tanks of CEOs. I have one in the commercial construction industry. I have led many, many CEO roundtable forums, and I find that it's a forum whereby individuals can use this group as an advisory board, as a sounding board, as a source for inspiration and sharing ideas. So, yeah, besides being an author and a speaker and speaking on this topic of sustainability, I really have a tremendous amount of passion for offsite strategic planning retreats, team building retreats, and peer groups.
Which really makes you an influencer on a level where people can implement those ideas into their businesses, into their industry. So that's very cool. So the other thing I saw, which I think is fabulous, you're working with retired CEOs, right?
Program that I've created called Next Steps Peer Groups. And so it's primarily for very successful individuals, business people, or nonprofit, any leader, anybody that's been successful in their life. And now they're looking at what are the next steps going to be in my life? So it's not, what am I going to do from a legacy standpoint? How do I stay relevant? What are going to be my next step in business as I'm aging here? I don't want it to be only about business. I want to diversify my interests now, maybe even before I'm retired. And I want to engage in my relationships. I want to deal with philanthropy and wealth transfer and health and travel and kids and aging parents and grandchildren, all those issues. So it's a roundtable. It's a peer group of 12, and people share. We put out questions. People are sharing how they're beginning to think about these different ideas. How do they want to continue? And it's been very well received, and I'm having a blast with it. I'm 62, so it's something I created because I've seen such a tremendous need for this.
And are those areas where you're bringing your sustainability ideas into, or it just comes in naturally, or it's more based on whatever the interest of the individuals are which joins a group?
The group has its own personality. Sustainability and conscious leadership is just such a big part of who I am. And, this is really an important part of sustainability. The individuals that are in this group are very successful business leaders. I've always tended to work with leaders in business because I'm a big believer in leverage, and we all only have so much time and effort and energy. And how do we get the greatest amount of leverage from our time and energy? And I feel like if I can have some impact or influence on those that can influence many, that's a good return on my time and energy. And so ultimately in these peer groups, it really is about individual sustainability, and these individuals have resource. And so through the conversation, it's inspiring people to do nonprofit work, to look at how can they contribute and apply some of these principles and do good things in the world.
Nice. I love it. Here's something else which kind of struck, and this has nothing to do with you necessarily, or maybe we can't really find a solution to it. But you interviewed 21 CEOs, and there's only one woman in there, and it's not, let's put it like that, it's not a very diverse group. Is it some you find worldwide, or is it just the people you knew, or do you want to say anything about that, or is there anything to say about that?
No, I think that's a very fair observation and very fair question, and that's really on me. There are wonderful, amazing women leaders out there, and I'll take responsibility for. I had 3 interviews scheduled with Indra Nooyi, who's the CEO of PepsiCo, who is an amazing woman. We just weren't able to get the schedules together. There were 2 or 3 other women CEOs that I had on my target list, and we were trying to get our schedules together, and we could not get them together before the cutoff for the publisher to get the book done. But it's very fair. There, I really, in terms of this the dealing with the inequality issues that are out there. I think it's very important that, that we support women in leadership roles. They bring a tremendous amount of compassion and wonderful leadership to corporations. I'm heartened to see that it's happening. It's albeit slowly and too slowly, but I do see a tipping point where there is going to be a change and there will be a shift, and more women are coming into those leadership positions that are operating and acting with their feminine energy, not just women that are operating and leading with masculine energy, which is how it's been set up to this point. And I see the tides turning, and I think that's very important. But it's a very fair question, a very fair observation.
Well, I'm really heartened to hear that because, for a long time it was very difficult for women to rise. And I like that you talked about the feminine and male energy, because I think a lot of women did climb the ladder, so to speak, by letting go of the feminine side of themselves. So I'm not in that circle, so I can't make any judgments. I'm really happy to hear from you that is changing, and that maybe in 20 years, if you write a follow-up book, it would look very differently.
Marianne, I don't see it taking 20 years. I see it changing. I see there's very rapid change occurring in the world today, and it's just undeniable. It's an undeniable force and a critical force for sustainability, is that we have more balance, and we have more balance in these energies, and I just see it happening much faster. I think everything's accelerating now. You're seeing change happen at a much more rapid rate. People are opening up and becoming aware that there's other technologies out there. There's other, it's safe for them to come out and express even their spiritual nature in business. And I don't mean a dogmatic or organized religious, but I mean spiritual from who they are, coming forward and bringing that out in the world. And I think that's necessary. And I think it's going to be happening very quickly.
That's great. I'm really happy to hear that. That's wonderful. And I think sometimes people feel very hopeless, when you look at the papers or the news, it's so much negative news. So it's good to hear that there's this really positive trends going on. And I think you also talked in your book about that people are inventing new things all the time, something we might not even have perceived as possible 2 years ago, to address some of the problems we are facing right now. Do you have any examples you want to talk about?
Well, I think there's always new technologies coming up. There was a CEO of one of the CEOs I interviewed was Tom Saki, who is the CEO of TerraCycle, and they're a company. They're based in New Jersey. They do amazing work recycling unrecyclable products. And Tom is he's a young, I probably put him in his 30s, but a young leader who has a passion for this area, and they recycle cigarette butts, they recycle magic markers, they recycle things that people previously never believed that could be recycled. And they're doing it in sustainable ways, and they've created alliances and partnerships all over the world to accomplish this. So 10, 15 years ago, people wouldn't have believed that was possible. So there's a lot of technology, there's a lot of innovation occurring, and I'm very optimistic. And I think we have to be really careful what news we pay attention to.
True.
Such a bias in the news, and it's easier to manage or control people if they're in fear and they're in panic and they're worried. And it's really important for us to look at where are we getting our information and to focus on what are we thinking about. If we're continually focusing on the instability, it creates anxiety, and it's hard for us to transcend that and think about new ideas and staying positive. So the more positive we can get, as we're focusing on positive messages, it spreads, and it uplifts the communities and uplifts the world and eliminates this hopelessness that's out there.
Thank you for saying that. It's so true. If people are in fear, it's very easy to direct them in all kinds of ways. And seeing the positive and knowing that it's possible makes such a huge difference for sure. I wanted to bring one more thing up, which I couldn't quite see how it can happen, but you interviewed the CEO of Whole Foods, and they're planning on putting all kinds of stores into food deserts, right? But usually those are really low-income communities, and Whole Foods is not known for having cheap pricing. So how does that concept work? Do you know? Did he talk about that?
Well, I think it's a very valid point, and I don't have an answer for that. Walter Robb has also he was the co-CEO with John Mackey at Whole Foods, and Walter has since left Whole Foods, which is disappointing. Huge heart, left the organization, but I think that the main focus with in putting into some of the food deserts was also to focus on supporting the community from an employment-based standpoint and offering bringing an opportunity to create jobs into those communities. But it is a fair point, and I don't know if their pricing policies take into consideration the economic community, the viability of the economics in the community that they're opening in.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you had heard more. Maybe they were considering a different level, pricing structure for different areas and stuff like that. I was curious when, when I read that, I thought, how is that going to work? Because it's great to create employment, but you also need to have the business, enough people being able to support a business in any given area to make it viable. So
exactly right.
It was just, I was wondering if you had heard some. I couldn't quite imagine it. So, Mark, would you like to share anything else we haven't touched on?
I think we've covered the key points. I guess, my call to action is really for people to pay attention to sustainability. If it's their own individual sustainability, their health, their financial well-being, to take a look at, what they're buying and do they really need to have that? And is there a way to reuse or recycle? But just to look at your own habits. I mean, it's a real simple thing to do. It's real easy to click that button on Amazon and have something delivered the next day. It's almost too easy. And if you don't stop and think about all the resources that are used in clicking that button, from all of the fulfillment and the shipping and the packaging, and I've gotten things in the past where it's a little small item in a huge box, as opposed to me even paying a couple of dollars more and just going down the street and supporting, a retailer in my community. It cost me a couple dollars more, but it's saved far more than that if you look at all the resources that are expended, the gas and the delivery and everything else of ordering it, from an online resource, even though it is easy and convenient. I think a lot of it is people just don't think about that resource consumption. And then also focusing on people in your workplace, making sure that they've got a safe environment and that they're doing well. And then your community, just focus on sustainability, just where you live and work. There's so many ways to contribute, even if it's volunteering or working to support the homeless community or mentoring kids or, just rolling up your sleeves and getting involved in some kind of community activities, just donating your time and money to schools, whatever it happens to be. But all these are ways that individuals can contribute to sustainability and will make a difference. And people will find that you really can do well by doing good.
I really love that. To buy your book, what do you recommend? What's the best place for people to get it? And I know we already mentioned Amazon. Everything is on Amazon. Yeah. But do you have another preference?
Well, I think Amazon's probably the easiest, way. They've got it's available in hardcover and softcover and Kindle. So Amazon's the simplest way, I think, for people to get it. It's the most well known. I would invite them to go to my website, marklefko.com, if they're looking for a keynote speaker. I'd love to share a lot of the ideas and engage audiences and groups. And then if it's a business and they'd like to explore, corporate retreats, or if it's a CEO, I do coaching and mentoring for CEOs. Go to marklefko.com, or there's which will get you to my lefkogroup.net, which is my business website that has a lot of these other services on it.
Excellent. Yeah, and I'm definitely going to link to it in the show notes so people can find it there too.
Fantastic.
And yeah, thank you so much, Mark. I really appreciate that you came on and I got to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marianne. I appreciate the time of your listeners. Thanks everyone for considering this sustainability concept.
While we usually talk about alternative economy system, or we have been interviewing small business owners who are trying to make a difference in the world, I think it's very interesting to come from the perspective what big businesses can do. And Mark is really going out into the world, making a difference on a level where it might count a lot more than what we individuals are doing in our homes. That said, I think it's very important to still see how important individual actions are, because you might recall that CEOs are bound to satisfy the shareholders. And the shareholders are usually saying, you need to make more money, you need to make more money. And there's really no room for, well, there is room, but it's harder to think about the environmental impact or to think about the long-term impact, because it's immediate. If you're not making me money in this quarter, then you are fired. So I think as consumers, we have, or as shareholders rather, in some of those businesses, we have the power to say, hey, we want you to do differently. Watch out for what is happening in the environment. How do the actions of your company affect what's going on? So I hope you enjoyed this show. Let us know what you think. You can reach us via Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest. Well, Pinterest is not really somewhere you make a lot of comments, I don't think. But we have an email, sustainablelivingpodcast@gmail.com, and Janice at sustainablelivingpodcast.com, Mariana at sustainablelivingpodcast.com, so you can reach us. Let us know. Tell us what you think. Bye for now.